I'm encouraged because think how the industry's changed in 20 years. You were hard pressed to find any negotiating work 20 years ago, much less integrated project delivery, lean. I mean, lean was making the inception of lean for construction was being talked about. It really has gained the momentum in the last 10 years or so. It just points up the fact that everything we're working toward is more collaborative, more relationship driven. I mean, you can't have lean without the people side of that equation. A lot of people try to. They try to make it a process or a scheduling tool, which it's not. No. The people sides of what we do day to day and putting projects together is vital for success. And if you're not adept at that and you haven't explored these areas and you haven't really taught your people what this means and how it affects them, and it affects everything, it affects safety, it affects stress, the stress levels that we put people through, affects how they perform. And it all boils down to performance for me. It's all about performance, mental, physical, emotional performance, as well as some type of spiritual aspect to this, which we don't talk about maybe specifically in that context. Having something outside of yourself that's important. And I think all of those elements need to be in place.
No, you're totally right. And I think it's being recognized in other industries as well. I'm reading a book now that Jeff Sutherland is making me read. And that's what a good mentor does, is he forces education on you. And it's a book about Scrum, and the preface is actually quoting from the Tao Te Ching and talking about the spirit of how we play, form, and work together. Yeah. And I'll just give a plug to Jeff for anyone who's going to be, the 1,000 questions I'm going to get asked. You know what? Let the comments come. If you don't know what the title of the book is, send me a comment and I'll answer it, or drop me an email.
Yeah, so we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, man. I'm wide open.
Welcome to the EBFC show, the easier, better for construction podcast. I'm your host, Felipe Engineer Manriquez. This show is all about the business of construction.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Lean Construction Institute. LCI is working to lead the building industry in transforming its practices and culture. Its vision is to create a healthy and thriving industry that delivers outstanding project outcomes every time for everyone. Join me and many others from the Lean Design and Construction community at their 22nd Annual Congress. It is being held virtually this year, the week of October 19th. Our theme is the ABCs of Lean: transformation through actions, best practices, and coaching. Register at www.lcicongress.org/2020. Check the show notes for more information. Thank you, LCI.
Now, to the show.
Well, I know you are wide open. That is a fact, Brent. When I had the pleasure of speaking with you in person, as brief as it was, I got the sense right away that judgment was really low. You accepted me just the way I was, and I felt safe and secure.
Well, good. That isn't a deliberate thing, but I'm happy that that's what you felt, because certainly I would like that for everybody. In fact, I'd like everybody to be able to do that as well as receive that.
It was quite striking to meet somebody like yourself. You were like a living, breathing Carl Jung.
Wow. Well, that's a high compliment.
And it's kind of funny that just this week alone, Brent, I was talking to a gentleman that runs a small boutique construction company, and he's also a big fan of Carl Jung. And I thought, what are the odds? It just must be like psychology week in construction right now.
Well, I'm meeting people. I met a woman on LinkedIn I did a podcast for ASCE, and it was a roundtable discussion, and she's teaching mindfulness and meditation to the construction industry. And then There's another woman in Australia that's doing something very similar, emotional intelligence and health and well-being, to the construction industry. So I think we're starting to wake up. I think the collective consciousness is a little bit, it's on the rise, and people are starting to really get these concepts and know how good they are for them as individuals and for us as an industry.
I think that's a key thing with the change in generations in the workforce now. I read something earlier this year that the millennials and Generation Y have overtaken the majority in the construction industry now as the dominant group.
Nice.
We've had quite a few people retire, from the older, and I'm like in the middle where I am. So I'm straddling, and I can see, one way it's this way and another way it's totally new and different, and just right in the middle. Always correcting people that I'm not a millennial. I'm not offended. I'm just not that young.
Well, and we got to remember, I did some math the other day, and there's an article in Kurt's magazine called The Voice on generations, why we're not so different, that I wrote. And the oldest millennial is now 40.
Oh my God.
So we got to quit talking about those kids.
Yeah, the change is here. So I want to pick your brain, because it's not often that we get somebody with your experience to come on the show. And this is a topic that's been weaving through the last handful of interviews that I've done with folks, have been talking about the psychology of the job site and how things are changing. And I noticed that that's a space that you work in quite significantly. For those that don't know, can you tell the audience, who is Brent Darnell?
Well, my job is I teach emotional intelligence and all of the critical people skills to the construction industry. And that's every part of the industry. I work on the design side. I work with general contractors. I work down to the foreman level with field folks, guys with tools in their hands. And it's all about understanding what emotional intelligence really is and how important all these critical people skills are to success of a project and to your own personal success and your own health and well-being. And I've done that in 20 different countries and probably at least that many states. And I also teach at the college level. I teach at Auburn and Penn State and Virginia Tech and Northwestern. And so we're starting to make some inroads into the young folks that are at school now that are going to be coming into the industry and telling them how important these skills are. And we all know it to be true. You can have those people that are pretty technically excellent or they're great builders, but they're not very good with the people end of stuff, and they're not effective. They're just sort of dinosaurs in the industry. They're no longer as effective as they used to be, and they used to be quite effective, I think, when the culture was so different. The thing that intrigues me, I've been doing this for 20 years. Can you imagine 20 years ago? This was probably really freaky and weird, and
yeah, it still is to a lot of people.
Well, maybe still is.
Right, Brent? And where can people get a hold of some of your work?
Well, they can go to my website, and actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm posting on my LinkedIn profile daily a chapter from the People Profit Connection.
All right.
And then I'm going to also post daily chapters from the Tough Guy Survival Kit, which includes relationship skills, communication skills, presentation skills, stress management, time management. So I'm going to be posting chapters every day on my LinkedIn profile, so they can download them one at a time on the chapter. They can go to my website, sprintdarnell.com, go to the store, and you got links to all the books. Did you know I wrote a book called The Tao of Emotional Intelligence?
I did not. You got to tell me about that book.
It's a great book. So I notice that I read the Tao Te Ching every day.
Wow.
So I have an app where I read, do the thing and read different aspects of the Tao Te Ching and then apply it to my day. That's part of my morning ritual. And I started noticing the real parallels between emotional intelligence and what I taught and the Tao Te Ching. So in the book, it's just a little book. You take the emotional intelligence test, you get your profile, you decide what you want to work on, and then if you want to work on, say, empathy, it goes through all the different permutations of the Tao Te Ching that have to do with empathy.
Oh, man.
So you can get your empathy Tao Te Ching in the morning and say, okay, this is what I'm going to apply throughout my day to try to work on my empathy skills. And I've also created an app from the book that does the same thing. So
I'm definitely getting the app and the book.
And the
sold.
Okay.
You sold me.
Good. Well, on my website, you can go to either the Android or Apple and get the app that you need, but the app's the same name, the Tao of Emotional Intelligence.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes, Brent, and then for people watching on YouTube, I'll put it right here so they can check it out, and as well in the description so people get a hold of that app and transform their whole life. I was flying quite a bit, and I would make sure in every flight up and down, I'd go through it at least once. And it definitely makes it a lot easier to navigate the world.
A big undercurrent of that is the constant change.
Yeah.
And in the construction industry, I think we have the tendency for status quo and whatever is easiest for us to go for, and we're not into radical change. And then you get something like a global pandemic that really lends itself to radical change and pivoting and figuring out new ways of doing things. So if you're not doing it now, you better be doing something, because the world's a different place.
That's the funny thing. Like we hear all these stats on how people hate change and we don't like change, and yet we're just a living embodiment of change. Exactly. We're in a constant state of change.
Yeah. Well, and it's the embracing of that change that I think is the key. And I always tell people, things being constantly changing makes everything possible.
Yeah.
Right.
But I want you to hit back on, you mentioned the topic of stress. I remember I was lucky enough to be in the audience when you're giving a presentation, and we all had to take the self-assessment. And it was a big construction group of folks in the audience, and I feel like 80% were over the line where normal stress should be.
Yeah. Can
you talk about what stress does to our cognitive functions for those that don't know?
Yeah, stress is a killer. It affects every part of your physiology, every part of your cognitive ability, judgment ability. In fact, the safety program that we've created talks a lot about stress, because I'm decreasing the ability to problem solve by up to 500%.
Ooh.
Because it's this low-level fight or flight that you're in. So your body's putting out these little pumps of adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormone, which guess what? Shuts down your thinking brain. Because your body thinks it's in danger. Your body thinks it's in fight or flight. So you don't need a thinking brain when you're in fight or flight. You're either going to fight something or run away or freeze. And those are the three options you have. And your brain just thinks it's a survival thing. So it's shutting down your thinking part of your brain. So you can't think as clearly. Your judgment isn't as good. And a lot of things can affect that besides stress. Things like nutrition, and glucose levels affect that. Things like sleep. There's a great book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And he talks about sleep, lack of sleep being a contributing factor to just about every disease you can name. Diabetes, any of these autoimmune diseases, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. It's traced back to lack of sleep. Either it is causing these things or exacerbates those things.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was your talk or somebody else talking on the topic of stress in the workplace, and they asked two questions. Raise your hand if you just recognize you're in a high stress situation or workplace, and then keep your hand up if your go-to food is sugary drinks, Red Bulls, Monsters. Yeah. Those types of things that keep you caffeinated. And the same hand stayed up.
Exactly. It just fuels it. And it gives you sort of a semblance of your brain working properly, maybe it does for a time because you've got this shot of glucose and caffeine, but the crash that comes later is devastating because you're going to be far lower than you were when you drank that thing.
Yeah.
Right. And it also, they've linked those energy drinks and the taurine, which is an amino acid, to heart palpitations and heart attacks as well. So those are really bad for you.
Oh yeah, man. When I was in college, Brent, my wife and I we were dating at the time. We'd go to the gym, pound a Monster, go home, wash our parents' cars,
paint the house. Cut the grass,
and then be like, "Whoa! It's just you're sitting still and you're sweating."
Right.
Yeah. The things you try when you're in college.
but I mean, I'm seeing those levels of stress really taking its toll. And then you tie that back into mental health issues. And we have the second highest suicide rate of any industry. And, it's sort of like when people are talking about lean and saying, we got this, and, we don't really need lean. We ain't got this, guys. We have a horrible productivity rate. We have a horrible record for how we treat our guys with tools in their hands. We have the second highest suicide rate. We got lots of folks that are way overweight, that are addicted to various over-the-counter or prescription drugs, that use alcohol and tobacco a lot. We're not winning. This is not a good thing. We really need to start addressing these issues of mental and physical health and well-being, or I think we're going to be in big trouble. We may already be in big trouble.
Yeah, we probably are definitely in big trouble. I mean, when we look at the statistics that's been done time and time again, you mentioned the productivity. We keep seeing roughly 75%, give or take a percentage. That's 3 out of 4 jobs are late and behind schedule. And it's so normal. I've got a lot of friends that are on the owner side, and they work in capital construction, every day, day in and day out. That's how they pay the bills. They're what I call serial builders. They're constantly, those are the big university clients, the big healthcare clients, pharmaceutical, people that are building year round. And they're so used to projects being late that they're not even surprised when it happens.
Yeah.
That's just the expectation. And it's not the building is not the problem. And it's not that people aren't smart enough to schedule well. There is just a level of complexity that we haven't kept up with.
Yeah.
Right? You've got this crazy amount of specialization. When you just look at construction titles today that exist, versus even 20 years ago, there's probably 20 times the number of specializations now than there was. And any given project team, I'll remember talking to a team earlier this week on a small job somewhere around the $20, $30 million mark, and the team was 45 people.
Wow.
And that doesn't even include the people that are going to be in the trades. That's just in the front end planning and the design of, and the stakeholders on the client side. I mean, the numbers of people coming together to make buildings happen now are just, I think, much, much larger than they used to be.
Yeah. I agree. It's something that we have to get our arms around, or it's going to be out of control. And I think that's where lean comes in. You're going to find the things that add the value and find the things that you really do need to do. And my guess is we're probably doing a lot of stuff we don't need to do.
No, definitely. Definitely. I'm guilty of that myself. I'm always trying to learn and to let go of the things that aren't valuable for anyone.
Yeah, it's true. But we get back to this change is hard thing. I read a book recently called Immunity to Change, which was such an interesting book. And these psychologists, they talked about the study of these people who had really horrible physical, some kind of disease or symptoms or something, and the doctor gave them drugs. And they interviewed, and they found, guess how many out of 10 actually take the drugs and do the protocols that are given to them?
I'd probably say, just to guess, I'm going to try to read your mind, somewhere less than 15%.
Yeah, it's 2 or 3. Yeah.
It was way less.
So this one guy, he had a double hand transplant.
Wait, so he had a double hand transplant. What happened to him?
Yeah, they had anti-rejection drugs, just kept forgetting, couldn't take it, and they had to cut his hands back off.
Wow.
So these psychologists came in and said, why do people do that? Okay, here's your heart med. You have congestive heart failure. And if you take these meds, you're going to live probably at least 5 to 10 years and have a healthy, normal life. And if you don't take it, you're going to be dead in a couple of years. And they found that people don't take it. Well, why? Well, there's something called psychological immunity. So there's some psychological reason that they have in their psychology that is telling them to do something or not do something to protect themselves. And I started trying to relate this to people I work with. Okay, I've got a guy that's a 50-year-old superintendent, total control freak, micromanager, And we know those guys, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, look, guy, I mean, think about it. You can make your life easier. You can work a lot less. You can mentor people. You can teach people. There's all these positive things, and yet they will not give up that control. Well, why? Well, the psychological immunity is, look, if I teach somebody to do it or mentor somebody to do it and they do it well, what am I here for? I'm making myself obsolete, right? I want to be relevant, and I want to be contributing, and I want to be, so the psychological immunity is, if I just, delegate, then I'm useless.
Yeah, if I give it away, then what am I getting paid for?
Yeah, exactly. So you got to overcome that psychological immunity before people will actually work on creating change. And it's really hard, but there's a really good methodology in the book, a step-by-step kind of methodology to try to figure out what is that stumbling block, what is that competing thing that's preventing me from creating this change. And change is hard. I always do this exercise. So everybody, when you're listening to this or watching this, do this with us. Say the names of the days of the week out loud. Ready, go. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Perfect. Now say the names of the days of the week in alphabetical order. Go.
Oh my God. I can feel my pupils dilating.
So see, most people will have given up by now.
I know that, it's got to be like Monday.
All right, do you want to know?
Yeah. It's Friday, Monday.
Friday, Monday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
There you go. Well, you've trained.
It took me like a week to learn that. Right?
I had to see the days of the week on a calendar in my mind in order to even find where's the earliest alphabet instance. So, but I felt my eyes go boom.
Yeah. See, in your brain, if your life isn't in danger, your brain just says, I ain't doing that. If it has to burn a lot of glucose to create something that's totally different than what those neural pathways that are established are, your brain will not do it. It's a survival kind of mechanism. And you know who the worst at this are?
Who?
The masters, the experts, because they just know the answer. They can't have that beginner's mind, right? They have the expert's mind, the master's mind, and they just know the answer. They can't get to that beginner's mind when they knew nothing, and there's infinite possibility.
Yeah, and that's where that, kind of leaning into chaos, that infinite potential of things that can happen.
Yeah.
Even I've been introduced as the lean guru recently. I mean, it was just yesterday, and I was laughing and laughing. And people are like, "Why are you laughing so hard?" I'm like, "Because it's funny. I come into things, try to be open, and just see what's going to manifest. Like what's going to happen. Like I'll have an idea of what we could do."
And I try to cultivate that as well. Even when I'm doing like a keynote, sometimes I'll just go way off script and do what the audience is sort of telling me to do, or I'm feeling that they're telling me to do. Yeah. And those instincts, things are always better.
Oh, yeah.
If you just let things unfold and capitalize on what's happening in those moments instead of coming through with these preconceptions on whatever it is, how to run a meeting or how to do a full plan, or,
yeah.
You're so much better off.
Are you watching my stuff, like how to run a meeting? Yeah, how to do, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. It is, and that's hard for people, especially if you're in a habit of control.
Yes.
To let that go and just see what happens. It is better. Like, do a small experiment, something really tiny, and see how it goes, if it goes better or not. Yeah. I was having this conversation with my son earlier today. He's kind of been phoning in his exercise routine since he's been out of the activities due to COVID. Mm. And I just, instead of telling him what he should do, I turned it around. I said, "Hey, how strong do you want to get?" And his answer was, "Stronger than you."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Good boy. How are you going to do that if you only have to what you're supposed to do?" And he's like, "It's not going to happen." I was like, "Well, then I'll always dominate you, boy." So then the next time I saw him, he was like dripping with sweat.
Nice.
He stepped up his game.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wants to be stronger than Dad. And I encourage that. Like, be stronger than Dad for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, he's a sharp kid. And most people are like that. I just have the one kid.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's all I can. I have two hands, so one kid's all I get.
Right.
I can't handle more than two.
Yeah.
Not that skilled. How about you, Brent?
No kids. I married late. So I was 40 and my wife was 43 when we got married. We decided not to have kids. So
Well, you can just adopt me. I could
All
be
right.
one of your children out here running around.
Okay, sounds good, man.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to move into a bigger place, so we'll save your room for you.
There you go. Yeah, just keep my room the way it is. You know,
Right.
I like my tchotchkes and my knickknacks, as you can see from behind me.
All right.
So people that go to your website, you give a lot of stuff away for free, Brent. I mean, that in of
do.
itself is an interesting concept in our business, is because you're technically a consultant, and here you are
Yeah.
just giving away all this free stuff. What is some of the rationale for that?
Well, my mission statement is to help to transform the industry, and my theory is the stuff I've created for the industry and the stuff I've kind of cobbled together from lots of different sources. It's really not mine. It's a bunch of different people's. I never copied anything or stole
Sure.
anything, but I took concepts and say, okay, wow, that would really work in a lean setting, or that would work with learning relationships. And so a lot of it's stuff that I've taken from a bunch of different sources. So it's not really truly absolutely mine, although I take credit for piecing them together and applying them to construction. And the other thing is, I mean, the mission statement is to help transform the industry, and I can't do that if I'm covetous of the information that will help transform the industry, right?
I love that. You're taking that commandment to heart, not coveting.
Yeah, that's right. So, by the way, if they go to brentdarnell.com/resources, there's an emotional intelligence test. There's something called the body battery inventory that'll measure stressors versus recovery stuff. There's a really good team exercise called the 4 quadrants. There's the Tough Guy Survival Kit, 2nd edition is there. So it's all kind of really good stuff there.
Yeah, and I took that first test myself, and I saw that that I was heading in the right direction towards being more empathetic.
Okay.
And I say heading in the right direction. I wasn't where I wanted to be. Like in my mind, I was much further along than I really was.
Right.
It was a good wake-up call, and you can't game the test.
No.
So you've done well to make that assessment.
Well, good. It was a friend of mine that actually did the questions. He's got a PhD in sociology, and he's very smart. So he did that. And it's not perfect, and it is a self-perception evaluation, so it's your perception of yourself. So there's all kind of little limitations built in, but sometimes, like you said, it can be a nice wake-up call or a nice, just pointing you in the right direction, which is what this is all about, is figuring out, are there some things that I could work on to be better? It's the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of the old Stephen Covey, sharpening the saw.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, you can cut the tree down, or you can spend time sharpening the saw and cut the tree down faster.
Totally. That metaphor is so appropriate for this industry. I cannot tell you how many times that people have that excuse of, well, we got to get the work done. Well, the owner came and said, you know what, I want to see some footers in. Well, why don't we take about 6 weeks and really do some heavy duty playing? No, we don't have time for that. We got to get some footers in. So it's like, okay, let's go get some footers in, which may change based on what we're trying to do here. But okay, we'll get some footers in if that's what the owner wants. And it's like, when are we going to learn? I always tell this story. There was a Japanese construction firm, and they had a 12-month schedule, and the site was just cleared. The site. Month went by, and the owner said, like, hey guys, we got 11 months left. What's up? Well, we're planning. Well, okay. Another month went by. Hey guys, you got nothing. There's no footers. There's no nothing. There's no steel going up. What is going on? We're planning. Another month went by. 3 months, 4 months. Ooh. And finally, they just started doing stuff on the 5th month. And guess what? They finished a month early. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
And we don't do that. We don't. It's so chaotic and so like, let's just work over there for a while. Okay, well, let's work over here. Well, we're stopped there because of an RFI. Okay, well, let's go over there. That's fine. Let's do that.
Keep changing
And
direction.
yeah, and that's what we do whenever we finish, and they all finish, eventually.
Eventually they do finish, or you get told enough.
Yeah, right.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's there's some cultural things where we just like to make progress. It feels good to make progress.
Yeah.
Right? And planning is not exonerated or elevated in our culture.
No.
It's seen as like a necessary evil.
Right. Yeah, and that gets back to the whole conversation about you got to change the culture for things like lean and even technology, embracing technology. You have to change the culture first, because you can't just slap technology or slap a lean process on a culture that's not willing to embrace, accept, move forward, improve. It just won't work. Those are Band-Aids that just come off eventually, and you're back to the same old crap.
You bleed right through that Band-Aid.
Definitely.
Yeah, with the mental part, and I saw in your profile that you got an award from ENR some time ago.
Yeah.
I love the title of the award. Can you tell people what it is?
It's the Top 25 Newsmaker, and my award was for transforming alpha males into service-focused leaders.
And what year was that?
2012.
2012. Yeah, so we've got some traction on that.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? When they told me I got it, I didn't think anything about it. I thought, okay, well, that's kind of cool. And then when I went there and saw the people that they had given this to, I was blown away. The guy that won they have the Award of Excellence, which they picked one of the top 25 newsmakers. And the guy that won, in fact, no, that wasn't even the guy that won. It was another top 25 newsmaker. He was the guy that got the Chilean miners out.
Oh my God.
It's like, oh my God. Like, I felt so inadequate at that point, such an imposter at that point. But they said, no, you need to enjoy this. This is something that the industry, and this again, 2012, again, the industry wasn't quite there yet with regard to, collaboration and relationships and those kinds of things. So they said, you're on the cutting edge of this. Like, you're really doing some good work here. So enjoy it. And then they told me, they said, okay, let me put this in perspective for you. The odds of winning a top 25 newsmaker is much greater than, and in terms of general population, than you winning an Oscar. I said, wow, that's phenomenal. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So I did learn to embrace it, and really was humbled by it, because, like I said, these amazing people were nominated. But yeah, I mean, that's been my mission from the start, is to help the industry be better. I noticed there were a lot of alphas. I noticed that sometimes they get in their own way, and by teaching them a different set of skills, they learn to be really effective, and even more effective than they already are, because they are effective. They're just great people. They're the drivers. They get stuff done.
Yeah, they already make stuff happen. They know how to do it, and then increasing your skills with what you teach makes people the full package.
Oh, it just turns them into superstars. I'll give you an example. This guy I coached a couple of years ago, he was in Mexico. His name is Gabriel. And he was removed from a project because the owner said, this guy's a jerk, get him out of here. And his project team didn't want to work with him. And so he came to me and said, this is a 50-year-old superintendent that's got lots of experience. Totally just a badass, builder. Yeah. And he came to me like a whipped dog. He looked awful. And I said, look, man, let me just lay this out for you. There's nothing wrong with you. I said, this is just a different set of skills. That's all this is. So we're going to learn a different set of skills, and you're going to be more effective with a lot less wear and tear on yourself. So he was all in, as most alphas are. He did the hard work. He really did a lot of work on empathy and social responsibility and being a better team member. And so about 6 months into this engagement, they put him on a project with a really difficult client. And the client had hired a construction management firm to keep an eye on things. And the construction management firm's guy was just crazy. And he kept posting like staged photos of things that were wrong that he staged himself. And this guy, Gabrielle, had developed such a good relationship with the ownership that they ended up firing the construction management firm.
Wow.
And just hired this contractor directly, right?
That's right.
So fast forward, my dog's barking.
Got the dog barking.
Chips, hush.
No,
hush.
The dog's like, this is so on point. I gotta.
That's right.
Gotta get the barks out.
Fast forward another 6 months, and they promoted Gabrielle to chief operating officer for like all of Mexico. He was like the ops guy, head guy.
Became the man.
That was in 10 months. He did that, from being removed from a project to the ops manager for the whole country. So that's a living testament to alphas, that they do the work, they make the changes, and they create something that they didn't even know they could create. Right.
Now that 10 months, just to give perspective to folks, it's probably, if I'm guessing, some daily work that he's doing right over that 10-month period. It's not like a 2 day transformation and then the butterfly emerges from the cocoon.
No, it doesn't happen that way. We found that this is more like learning to play a musical instrument or learning a language. It's a different part of your brain. It takes a lot of repetition and coaching and follow up. And we did like at least monthly calls and sometimes every few weeks. He called me about halfway through and he said, I know you're not a counselor, but maybe you can help me with this. He said, my niece has moved in with us and she's a pain in the ass. We kind of hate her. Like she's trying to run our lives. And I said, well, what's happening with her? And he said, well, she just got a divorce. She lost her job. And that's why she's having to move in with us. She lost her place to live because she can't afford it. And I said, how do you think she's feeling right now? And his face just like lit up. You could see the empathy coming in, And he said, she doesn't feel good about herself, does she? And I said, well, how would you feel? I said, remember when we first started? Think about your body language and what you look like. He said, wow. He said, I never thought of that. He said, I said, so what are you going to do? He said, we're going to have a family meeting and I'm just going to tell everybody we're just going to love her and support her and just, be here for her, which they did. Yeah. And then about a month later, he calls me back and he said, my niece, she's dating someone. She's got a new job. She's looking for her own place to live. Everything has really turned around. And I think part of it was because we were so supportive of her. So, I mean, man, you get stuff like that going on where the guy's not only nailing it at work, but he's also, his personal life is better because of this work, right?
Yeah. And that's where, in my life, Brent, sometimes I get lucky. My wife has been just an unbelievable creator of that sense of it's going to be okay no matter what. Mm-hmm. All the trials and tribulations that I've gone through, she's just been an amazing rock. And
it's nice to have, man.
It's amazing. Even I've had relatives of mine tell me that it's unique and special, and you got to appreciate. And as you're telling the story, I'm just thinking, she just wakes up like that, and she's like that with me. It is very, very unique.
Yeah,
it's like a superpower.
Yeah, really, it is.
Yeah, I feel a little more stronger just knowing that someone's out there with my back.
Right. That's great, man. I'm glad you got that.
Yeah, it is powerful. And your mindset's the same thing. There's a business business owner. He's pretty famous on many different social media feeds. I won't name his name. He's kind of a quasi-private individual, but he does a lot of that type of coaching too, like similar to what you did with Gabrielle. Mm-hmm. And he said in some of the talks that I've heard that people's self-esteem can be a hindrance to creating an environment of success. And like in both those cases with the person you were mentoring and coaching and with the niece, like that was definitely something that was deficient.
Yeah.
And you can't always control what happens. Like something might happen at work and you get categorized or classified as an underperformer, right? And then you get labeled.
Yeah.
The labels are really hard to take off of you.
They are. Well, and it gets back to that original conversation we had. You felt no judgment from me. And, like I said, I didn't do that deliberately. Like, let me just make sure I'm not judging this person. But I think it's something you cultivate over time with working on your own emotional intelligence. Because I am a recovering jerk, totally. I was such a dick, man. I'm telling you, mechanical engineer, the smartest guy in the room, always had to prove that I'm right and you're wrong. And it was a horrible, horrible place to be. And so I've done a lot of work on myself through this journey of, figuring out what works for clients. So you're right. It's that journey of yourself and creating those changes and creating that space to create the change and working. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. My, in the work that I do, it's change work, right? It's
Totally.
It's constant change work. We do actually build things too in the work that we do, right? As an outcome, but it's people that make it all happen. And you've seen teams that are high performing. That was a big thing probably 20 years ago when Lean was getting started. And even, there's a lot of coaches out there in the industry now that are helping people with issues. And we're starting to use the athlete analogy with people in business now. To get a high performing team, you need high performing athletes, high performing individuals, right? We're moving in that direction. The analogies to the sports, I think, lend themselves really well.
Yeah, they do. And that always astounded me that we take a group of people, a group of strangers, and throw them in a room, and it's high pressure, it's high stress, and they eat crappy food, and they don't get enough sleep, and they don't manage their stress well, and they don't exercise ever, and then we expect them to perform at a high level.
Yeah.
And guess what? The amazing thing is they do perform at a high level, and they finish those projects, but it comes at a pretty high price. We have the second highest suicide rate. We have a lot of people that are getting these autoimmune diseases and heart disease and these lifestyle choice kind of diseases at early ages. And so it comes at a high cost. And I think we can work on both of those areas. We can work on teaching people the consequences of those lifestyle choices. And then we can manage projects better where they aren't so crazy and don't take such a toll. You can do both.
You can do both.
Yes, you can do both.
Use the and. And.
That's right.
Yeah. You can do the work and have a good time doing it.
Definitely.
You can be at work and have a family life outside of work.
Right. Exactly. I just posted on my LinkedIn chapter 8, which is the teamwork and trust and how to create high-performing teams on every project.
So you've got a lot of good stories about folks getting in touch with you and doing some transformations. And you mentioned you've been in 20 countries at least. Do you see today, are you still surprised at how similar human beings act regardless of where they live?
Totally. In fact, I did a 2-hour session on emotional intelligence and relationships in China Monday morning. And it's being curious about the cultural differences. And of course, the test is more Western culture. So this one woman said, well, I scored really low in emotional expression. And I said, well, that's probably a cultural difference because from Western culture to Eastern culture, you probably do have lower emotional expression and lower independence and higher social responsibility. So those cultural differences show up in the test. But what we talked about was everybody feels the same emotions. Emotions are universal, but it's the rules around expressing those emotions that are different. Yeah. And that can go for countries, for culture, even for companies, right? Even for offices within companies. Oh, yeah. There's different unwritten rules about how you express emotion and Some people are, and even gender differences. Like you get a guy that's kind of a really strong personality, maybe a little bit on the angry side, that's a real mover shaker. And then you get a woman exhibiting those exact same, traits, and she's labeled because of that. Well, she comes on a little too strong, So when people ask me about, like, I got this woman project manager, she's coming on a little bit too strong. I'll say, if she was a man, would you ask me that question? Would that be even on the table? No, you'd probably say, well, I got this great project manager. He kicks butt. He really can manage
He's a
those
pusher.
trade partners. Yes.
A pusher. They get the work done.
That's right. So we have to be aware that of those cultural biases, of those, those unwritten rules around emotions and expression, and make sure that we're curious about those and not condemning or judging about those, and explore those and ask those questions. If this was a man instead of a woman, would you be asking this question? And if the answer is no, then why not? Let's explore that.
Yeah.
And say, what biases have we come up with about strong women in this industry that we need to address, and we need to figure out, what's going on there.
Yeah, it's unique, and by mere chance, Brent, when I was coming into the industry right out of college, like the first handful of jobs that I worked at, my mentors and bosses were women. And it was I remember going to some of the company functions and looking out into the audience and seeing, just a handful of women in total. And I said, what are the chances that I keep ending on all these projects? And I just took for granted that women were better represented in the industry. And I just heard a statistic today in 2020 that in construction, women are still less than 10% of people in the workforce.
Yeah. And here's the more frightening statistic. Some astronomical, like I think it's 60% leave within the first 5 years of being in the industry because they see no opportunity. They see nobody like them in the C-suite. They see people with these unconscious and conscious biases against them that hold them down. There's elements of, this comes up at every woman conference I've been to. So this isn't me saying this is women saying this, is that sometimes women don't support other women in this industry, and that can become an issue. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some really brilliant women who are totally into mentoring and helping women move up and become those leaders, but there are some who aren't, and they're undermining that process. Again, that's not me saying that. That's them saying that at these conferences that are women's conferences. Yeah. So that's something that they want to address internally as well.
No, Brent, let the comments come to the show. Like just bringing it.
Well, I mean,
this audience has been too quiet.
It's the elephant in the room. We have to talk about that. And they do at these conferences. The women talk about it in the context of other women. And I think it's a conversation that has to be had. We have to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's still lots of issues out there, but I'm encouraged and hopeful that the younger people are really embracing the things that need to change and changing them. And, the baby boomers, there are some that are champions of those changes too. And the ones that aren't, I mean, they're going to be leaving, retiring. We're going to wish them the best and then usher in the new leadership and get people to really make some substantive changes in this industry in all areas, technology, diversity. And
the culture has shifted.
Yeah.
And we're just feeling the shift.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It's but again, you can go the other direction. You can either, through your wisdom, open up to possibilities, or you can shut your world down. So that's a choice.
Someone was talking today. They were a younger person, younger than myself, and they've had some new people join their team, and they were expressing how they've got these traditions, and mind you, this is like a young person. So this was just, for me, it was amazing to hear a younger person talking about honoring the traditions of their team, like the ethos of their team, the culture of their team, and they're like, no disrespect, but these new people coming in with these ideas of how things that should be. They're just fresh out of school. They're like energetic, excited to be, contributing and at work. And they're like asking, how do I deal with all of these new ideas that are like they're trying to throw away what we've built here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about, some of the people retiring, saying that, as they're leaving, they want to impart on the people below them, and they're almost like a foot out the door, about to retire like in a year or less.
Right.
Now they've got that sense of like imparting, and here you've got this like fractal story. Here's a younger person saying, we have these traditions, but I don't know how to make it evident to the new people why these things that we do are important. And I want to show them. And the new people are like, I want to show you because you're a dinosaur.
Right.
Someone, and the age difference is only like 5 years. They're not radically different in age. What do you do in that situation?
Well, I've always said that we seem to be about a generation behind in the construction industry. A lot of Gen Xers act like baby boomers, and a lot of Gen Y act like Gen Xers or even baby boomers. You know what I mean? It's sort of that old traditional hard work ethic, all of those kind of mentalities that are really present in the industry. But I think it, just like emotional intelligence, it's all about balance. It's the balance of honoring the traditions and then embracing the new ways of thinking and doing. And I think there's room for both. And I would, as an old, baby boomer, I would say my advice to other baby boomers would be err on the side of embracing the new, because I think that's where we fall down more than, maintaining the traditions. I think we're really good at that.
Yeah.
I think we're less adept at embracing the new things. So I would say, give them the space to do that, and give them the wherewithal and the mechanisms and everything to at least throw those ideas out on the table. And, the other thing is, I would take a look at my own emotional profile. And if I have the control profile and I tend to micromanage and resist change, then is that coming into play in this situation? Am I doing it because I really think that the old traditional things of our team are the best thing ever and can't be changed? Or am I just resisting something different?
No, that's good. And on the flip side, that, people that do have that control mechanism, and like you said, you're recovering, from that side earlier in your career. Right. So let's pick on you.
Yeah.
What are the good sides of being controlling?
Oh man, you're organized. You will get everything correct in terms of plans and specs and tolerances and all those things. That's an awesome part of that profile. And it's about creating that balance where you can get those things where you need to get them, but you also are open to a new product or a new technology or a new something that may make things easier. And you have to be open to that as well. And again, there's room for both. I think we think that there's not. Like, I get this, I ask baby boomers, is there one day a week or one day a month where your people could work from anywhere? No, they say. Now, this was before COVID.
Before COVID, yeah.
Before COVID, they would say, no, they have to be here at 7. And I said, well, that's a ridiculous argument. That is utterly ridiculous, because if you're updating, a BIM model or some kind of technology thing, or you're working on change orders, or you're working on a schedule update, you could do that from a beach in Aruba if they've got good Wi-Fi.
Yeah, which they do. I've heard.
Which they do. So
yeah, I've heard. I haven't been there myself, but I've heard.
So as baby boomers and these older, even doesn't matter age, doesn't matter generation, it's the people that are stuck in those ways. It's about opening up to those possibilities and saying, let's keep the best of what is, but let's also bring in the best of what could be, and maybe even some things that aren't quite cooked yet. Bring those in and let's figure it out together.
Yeah. And after COVID, there was at the beginning stages of COVID, after they'll probably say like, not in April here in the United States, but probably around May, it's like everything I saw on social media was a COVID webinar, how to adapt.
That's right.
Like what I saw and I subscribe to primarily construction things. I mean, I just saw like an outpouring of people adapting and sharing it simultaneously. Yeah. And I remember a year ago, I couldn't tell you what any given theme was or what people were sharing. I mean, outside of like the people that do BIM, God bless them, and they're beautiful things. BIM, all BIM shared. I mean, it is some gorgeous things that I see shared. You guys know, those of you that operate in that BIM space, my hat's off to you, because you make some of the most beautiful posts I've ever seen. But then to see the contrast with this year, just the openness and the transparency with like what's happening. I remember a client came to a group of their contractors, many contractors, like more than a dozen, and they asked the contractors, would you share with us what you're doing to pivot with COVID challenges? We want to know, not because we don't think you can handle your projects, but because we are struggling to pivot.
Right.
And we think we can learn from each other. And that created just a magical dialogue among, more than 15 different companies, and they all came out of it better.
Right. Yeah, it's important that, this forced disruption, if you're not innovating right now, you got to. Things are different and they will continue to be different. And I've done probably half a dozen webinars on pivoting and innovation and during this time and how to really look at things differently. One of the exercises I highly recommend is scrap your vision statement. Just throw it out the window. And most vision statements are pretty crappy anyway. They're, we want to be the preferred provider of construction services, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So scrap it and then have a contest, and you can do this online or you can do it in when we get back to the meeting, but create a vision statement that's exactly 32 words. So then you may have to put in some filler words, but you do it exactly 32 words. And then you have a second round, you do the winner of that round. In the second round, you do 16 words. And then you do round 3 is 8 words. And then round 4 is, 4 words, and then 2 words, and then 1 word. See what that 1 word ends up being, and see which is the sweet spot of really something innovative that is going to be good for decades. Because, Blockbuster had a plan and Netflix had a vision.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same thing for like Nintendo. Did you know Nintendo was a card company established in the 1800s?
No, I had no idea.
They were a playing card company, and their vision was to create people through play. Well, they're the biggest gaming company on the planet now, right?
Yeah.
So you got to have that far-reaching vision that's compelling, that's exciting, that's challenging, that's really embraces everything that we want to be in this future for this industry. And most vision statements don't do that. So we encourage them to start there and get this new vision, and then start embracing things that are different and saying, we didn't think this could work working remotely. And guess what? It does work. It can work. It can work very well.
Very well.
Yeah. So it's about embracing the best of that and then minimizing the downsides of that. And what I've found from teaching, I'm teaching a lot of courses and webinars and everything online now, is very little is lost. The only thing is lost is that human to human energetic connection. That's the only thing that's missing. But in fact, in some ways, the online stuff can be better than the in-person stuff. Because take just one example, introverts. Introverts that are in a room, they're going to sit there and be as quiet as they can be and not interact very much. Where if you got them chatting in and doing some exercises that they can do sort of anonymously, they're all over it. So you're getting better participation from those people.
Much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in the early days of the shift, we had some things scheduled to go in person and we couldn't because of travel restrictions, and we had to go virtual. And the team had said, before, always trying to be cost conscious and think, could I save some time and money not traveling? And I always put the offer out there, and nobody would ever take it. They always wanted in person, had to be in person. It can't work.
Right.
And now the virtual is way better, and there's no lost time to travel, and the collaboration is much deeper. The conversations are much deeper. It's just a testament that the human animal is the most adaptive creature on planet Earth.
And maybe we won't ever get that human to human energetic connection down from a technology solution, but boy, the technology's come such a long way in such a short period of time. And the features that are available that weren't available even a year ago are astounding.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that technology will continue to evolve and get better and better and better. And just like I remember doing webinars 5 years ago, and none of the videos played, and they were choppy and crappy, and I mean, yeah. And now I can do. I'm doing a virtual session tomorrow with 50 women in the industry. We're going to talk about COVID and innovation and diversity and all these things, and I'm putting them in. I'm doing interactive like whiteboards, and I'm doing chat stuff where everybody can weigh in. I'm doing breakout rooms where they can have some deep discussions in some smaller groups. And I mean, to me, that's even can be better in some ways than them all meeting in a room, you know? So
yeah,
you just got to use the technology and incorporate it. And the other thing I'm doing a lot of is taking a lot of classes on how to deliver online stuff in a more interactive, you know, better way, and get people to really embrace that, because quite frankly, I've sat in on a lot of these webinars and Zoom meetings, and a lot of them are really horrible and boring. And
it's a long lecture.
It is.
I remember when we had this team doing research. It's an international team. Shout out to the Construction Industry Institute for volunteering me to lead that team. Well, one of the things that happened, we had these meetings that we had said, you know, we started planning this. It's a 2-year ordeal, or a 2-year labor of love, however you want to look at it. Depends on who you are on the team. But you're doing research and construction. And we found that early we had to be in person. And people said that the in-person work is where it's amazing. And then when COVID hit us, it was a month before the next in-person meeting, and we had a shift to online. We went online, cameras on, two days, 16 hours. So 1 8-hour day online, and then the second 8-hour day online.
Wow.
And people said, wow, I'm going to have to rethink this online thing. That was actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like we finally, because we took all the things from the in-person, we were doing plus deltas at the in-person. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at those and I said, what were we not fixing? And we intentionally fixed the stuff that people complained about, like not having a break to do some email. I mean, teams had gotten into arguments about you're spending too much time like checking your email and you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. And then just giving people a little bit of space to do that, answer those critical things. Or my phone rang 4 times in a row. Should I take it? Yeah, you should. Right. Step out and take it, right? Yeah. Making those spaces, and people adapted, Brent. I'm amazed the adaptation that people do.
Yeah. Well, and with a little creativity and a little thought behind it, your online stuff can be just as engaging as any in-person thing. In fact, sometimes even more with the technology if you use it right. In fact, I'm trying to get the word virtual out of my lexicon, because virtual, Rich Seiler and I had this discussion. He says virtual, and he sent me a definition of virtual, which is not real, you know, a facsimile of reality or something like that. So I use the term online instead of virtual all the time, because it infers that, in fact, I call it live online learning, not a virtual class or a webinar. A webinar tends to be somebody talking for an hour. I don't do webinars. I do interactive, experiential stuff that's going to really be engaging and fun, and you'll learn a lot and apply it in the real time during the session.
That's awesome. We're birds of a feather on that way.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's got to be interactive. You got to get your hands dirty, have those experiences. I've been accused of being a theoretician, Brent, if you can believe that. And I said the only theory that I subscribe to is empirical theory, which says that all experiences are gained by direct senses.
Yeah.
Human sense making direct. I was like, that's it. That's called being live.
That's right.
Guilty of being empirical.
I am too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but this has been great having you come on and share. Is there anything else that you feel compelling to share, Brent?
Well, I would say take care of each other and check on each other often. The suicide rates are actually increasing across the board, all demographics. And so it's bound to be increasing in the construction as well. So don't just assume people are okay. Check in on them often and really try to get some good deep discussions on how they're doing. And don't forget the human side of this. We're isolated physically, but we don't have to be isolated, emotionally, or there's all kinds of ways you can connect with people. You don't have to be there to shake their hand or pat them on the back. But check in often, because some people are really struggling during this.
Yes.
People with anxiety and depression, and that isolation is really taking a toll on them. So make sure you let them know you're there. Let them know you're there to help them, and even can give them some resources. There's some great resources. PreventConstructionSuicide.com. There's some risk assessments you can take and collateral material. I invite you to have those discussions with your people as well, especially during this time, because it's hard.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can check that out and use that. I've definitely gotten the calls from some friends in the industry that have been struggling, and those have been we're just going to talk as long as you need to.
Yeah.
When you get if you're out there and you get that call, think about what else would you do. If you were in that position, you made the call to somebody else, you'd want somebody on the other end to just listen.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, likewise. You should be like a recurring guest. So I'm just gonna put it out there now. Like, this was so easy to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Same here. You're a good host, and I'm glad we touched upon some topics that maybe people are uncomfortable with. I think we need to challenge each other during this time. We talk about that all the time with Lean. Respect for each other doesn't mean you just shut up and be nice. It's challenging each other. So I hope there's some things that I said that challenge folks. Know that I'm here to help. I love the industry and I love the people in it. And if there's anything I can do to help you as an individual or your company, just call me. I've got lots of resources. And like you said, most of them are free. So check it out. Yeah,
definitely value add, Brent Darnell. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your week. Enjoy talking to the world and helping the industry get healthier.
Thanks, Felipe. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Very special thanks to my guest. I'm Felipe Engineer Manriquez. The EBFC show is created by Felipe and produced by a passion to build easier and better. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Let's go build.